Hey there, welcome to this interview. This is the King Heroes Journey podcast. My name is Beth Martins. Before I introduce my guest, I'll just let you know you're in the right place if you're looking for strong men. And there we go. In case you had double sound there, I turned that off. The King Heroes Journey is one that men who are everybody comes to this journey in a different way. Some people's backs are up against a wall. That was my story, and I believe that to be true of my guest as well. I'll let him speak for himself. I nearly died of a stage 4 lymphoma. Facing my death was what got me on a path of self-truth, where I could look inward, I could see the thing that was happening, what I felt to be outside. I found it inside. I was able to completely heal and turn around and want to help others. That's the hero's journey, where you're not satisfied just to slay your own demons. You actually want to turn around and make a difference for others. I'm a business coach. I also coach with archetypes, and now I'm training coaches how to use these tools of deprogramming and releasing and finding oneself in a really precise way to get to a place where they can then help others. So that's my overall mission in life. Now, I had the immense pleasure about our guest today, George Jagatic. Did I say it right?
Jagatic.
Jagatic. So close. I was really close. Jagatic. Beautiful. I had the pleasure of being introduced to him by Jerry Marzinski, who I hope can make it today for the live. Hello, by the way, to Nachiketa, and David is here. Thanks for coming on and being in the chat. Nachiketa says, Beth is a fighter. Yes, I have a reputation for that. And George, I would hazard a guess to say, is also a fighter in a really great way. His story is really phenomenal. When I heard him being interviewed, I knew right away that I needed to speak to him. And because our work overlaps in very interesting ways, I've had some experiences that seem similar to what George has been through. But George is one of these very rare individuals who is brave enough to get out and talk about the things that are going on inside. And that's my policy too. If I talk about the way that I've struggled in my life, I've seen all kinds of people get the benefit of that. So it's really worth it. George, you were a psychoanalyst before. I'll just give you a very brief introduction. Before having a struggle with a meth addiction. Meth is something that is very close to my heart. Before this interview, I texted a dear friend whose son is struggling with this exact thing right now. It's a growing problem in Winnipeg where I am. I know a friend of mine was broken into by a couple of meth addicts. They had to chase them down. I remember being in a parking lot one time where a woman on meth was absolutely tortured and lost and camping in the A&W parking lot. It's taking our youth down, and it's not just a problem for youth, obviously, but it's something that, to me, watching the fact that George had overcome this, I just felt your story absolutely needed to be told. George, welcome to this interview.
Thank you, Beth. I very much appreciate the invitation, having the opportunity to be here and to share this story. I love what you're doing with the King Heroes Journey, and your process going through cancer. When I read it, it was really heartfelt, and I was just amazed at your turnaround. Just absolutely amazed at your turnaround. And I have to say that a lot of similarities. Having cancer and struggling with addiction, they're major hurdles that we go through in our life. Life-changing. And the addiction that I was going through, I was in a very, very dark place. It was a horrible place to be. And I have to say, this experience that I've gone through, what I'll be talking about today, which is hearing voices and alternate realities, has been profoundly life-changing. Absolutely profoundly life-changing in ways I could have never imagined prior to going through this.
I have shivers head to toe. I don't know if you can see the hair standing up on my arms, but the connection is so palpable. Like, here's two people with very similar experiences, having come to the other side, and what we're doing right now, just to let you guys in on this, and I haven't talked to George about this either, but we're raising energy. and not just for ourselves, but you and I spoke at length the other night on the phone, and when I got on the phone, I felt kind of mediocre, and when I got off the phone, I was like, la, like this kind of singing energy, and together over the course of the discussion, we, certainly my experience anyways, is we raised our energy, and I became a more tuned in, heartfelt, grateful person just for this conversation, that connection. So that's why I'm so passionate about sharing this with others.
That's awesome. And I think there's really so much to share, and so much that you and I are both in alignment in terms of helping others, because I really feel some of the things that I learned and some of the things I've been through can help others. One
Exactly.
big aspect of my own process was being absolutely 100% truthful from the get-go, from the moment it started. I said to myself, I have to be truthful. I mean, brutally honest. And saying that I had a meth addiction is hard enough, but then to talk about hearing voices on a daily basis, and I still do have that experience and hear the voices, has been really, really challenging. But it's one of the greatest things is that liberation from being truthful and from putting out there what is. We're going through this human experience, and the things that I have encountered over the last couple of years have been so profoundly unbelievable in so many ways that it's challenging to wrap my head around it, and for others to understand or to consider it just for a moment is my goal here. Just to consider what it might be like to hear voices, and to consider what those voices might be and why they're saying the things that they're saying.
I love that you have enormous curiosity about your experience, and curious and courage are the same thing. That as soon as you're curious, then your willingness to look at things that are very difficult, that feel terrible, that are by social standards are some kind of shame to be hidden, then you're in a new place, and I commend you for that. Do you want to talk a little bit about your experience, what you've been through in your own words?
Sure. So I'll go back. As I said before, I was in a very dark place with my addiction, and methamphetamine is a horrible drug. I believe one of the worst drugs ever created by man. Now I'm a strong person. I was a psychotherapist back in New York, and I know all about addiction, and I know all about recovery. And I've been to 12-step meetings for years and years and years. But this was something that took me down a very different path, a path that I could not on my own recover from. And so what began happening in the depths of the worst of my usage, what would happen is I would use, and I would begin to hear things, and I would begin to see things. There was a lot of visions, a lot of things that I would begin to see around me. You hear about paranoia, you hear about people hearing things, and you hear about people seeing things. Shadow people were part of my experience, and that's what would happen is I would use, and I would begin to hear, see, and experience things that were not what one normally sees around them in their day-to-day life.
Would it be okay if I asked you what led up to that moment of using meth? Do you mind to share what you feel drove you to that?
That's an interesting question, because we're going back a long ways. I'm gay, and growing up gay was is a big part of who I am, because I grew up in a very small town, and we're talking about 1979, 1980, when I came out. And I really fought, because the community in which I lived in was very anti-gay, and it wasn't known back then as it is now, where we have gay marriage, and we have will and grace, and we have, being LGBTQ is such a part of our culture, and it's so known by very many people. So it wasn't at the time. And so when I came out, I did so in a kind of a big way, because I came out in a community that was not very friendly. Also, religion, I felt I was not accepted by religion because I was gay. And so I really fought a lot of things. And as I lived my life, and as I kind of battled through it, I think I turned to drugs as a way to deal with those emotions and to deal with, how do I live in this life? I didn't feel accepted by society, and I didn't feel accepted by religion. So there were no holds barred. You know, I could do whatever I wanted because I was not a part of society. I wasn't accepted. And that kind of continued. And the gay community after AIDS blossomed into this celebratory, what was called at the time circuit parties. And these circuit parties were rife with drugs. And so that was kind of that snowballed it. And so it was, oh, just go and dance and use drugs. And I did. And so it became accepted. I wasn't a part of society, and I could do what I wanted and you know, use these drugs. And that just snowballed into a place in my life where it went from every once in a while to a regular occurrence. The last year of my time in New York was really bad. And again, as what would happen is I would pick up and use. I'd begin to see these visions and hear these voices, and after I would stop, 4 days the drug is in your system, I would generally hear the voices for a couple days, and then after the drug had left my system, they would go away. Well, this was a very regular, ongoing pattern. So I would use, I would hear the voices, I would see the shadow people, they would leave my system, and then it would go away, and it was life as normal. So I went back and forth between these two worlds until one day in December of 2018, the voices came after I had used, and they never went away. And it was 4 days, and then it was 5 days, and then it was a week, and then it was a month, and then here I am to this day where I can still hear the voices. And my perspective on this, because now I'm sober, and I've gone through a tremendous amount of healing and work on myself in terms of coming away from that experience. I absolutely believe that I deteriorated my spiritual body, and that my spiritual body was eroded, was eaten away in a way that we can't see. I mean, I think I saw a comment here of somebody who said, I hate seeing the before and after pictures of people with meth. Well, you see what it does to your physical body with the teeth and the hair and the skin and the eyes, and how horrible it was. And I never got to that place, thank God, but my spiritual body did. And I absolutely believe that eroded to a place where these entities, these beings, were able to make contact and get through and establish this ongoing communication in a way that said, no, we're not letting go of you. You know, there was a problem here. And you know, we're going to be with you in a way that forces your hand, and forces your hand in a number of different ways. I could have gone back in the direction I was going and just continued to use, or in my case, what I did is I feel like I turned inward and I went to that place inside that I trusted, which I feel is God. There is a part of me that feels that I went to that spiritual core of who I am. And I said to these voices, I said, if you're going to get to know me, because what they did at the very beginning was spent a tremendous amount of time understanding who I was on every level. And I said, if you're going to do it, all the doors are open, wide open. Let's do this, and I'll be truthful. I will bare my soul to you. And I feel like I went to this place of trusting something deep inside of me that I call God now, and that I was able to maintain a sense of self as these voices and these experiences. Because it wasn't just the voices, there were visions, and there were synchronicities that would show up around my daily life that would try to pull me away from my center and pull me away from my core of who I was. And I said, no, I'm not. At the beginning, the voices said, we're the voice of God and you are Jesus, or you are a prophet, they said. And they tried to, again, pull me away from my core. And I said, no, I'm just George. And if you want to get to know me, I will just be me. And who I was slowly began this process of healing. And the voices have the entire process has changed incredibly from day one, where I was hearing them intermittently, to where I was hearing them continually, to now in my sobriety and in a much healthier, much more spiritually strong place in my life, where I barely hear them. And so I feel like there is a healing that is happening. And it's not a healing that is just my physical body. Again, I go back to, it is my spiritual body that has been undergoing this process of healing, and has been, and has changed the ability, or this veil between the two worlds that was weakened and that was loosened. And it just, it was looking back on it, what I drew from it and what I heard from it was incredibly powerful.
Amazing. Just so feeling the energy around it. It's big, isn't it?
Oh, it's huge. It's huge.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to say, there's some things that are so important here. That there are so many people around the planet, and from the beginning of time, have heard voices, have heard things, and they attribute it to many different things. You can define it in any way that you see fit. One of the facts that I like to bring out there is that our human eye, in the spectrum of light, can only see such a small amount, and the spectrum of light is so big that what I absolutely believe is that these entities, for a neutral word, these entities are around us each and every moment, and we are not aware of it. We cannot see these things. There's all kinds of words that we can throw around and that we can put out there to describe our experience. And I often use the words angels, and I use demons, and I use positive and negative, and I use spirits, and I use aliens a lot, and even technology comes up. These are some of the storylines. You have to understand that when you hear something communicating with you 24 hours a day without a break, I mean, there's constant talking, the story builds, because what is being said relates to how you're moving through this space and time, this world. Okay, so my body is moving through this world, and what I'm hearing is relating to that. So then, as I'm going through my daily life, these things are making comments, and the story is building. The story, it keeps going and building and building, and they'll react to things I do or things I think, and then even the way I felt. So for example, if everybody out there who's watching this, take a moment and just notice how you're feeling. Now, think of something that got you angry or upset, and shift that feeling just a little bit. Now think of something that got you happy, and shift that feeling a little bit more. Think of somebody that you really care about. Now those shifts, those minor shifts in feelings, I would get comments about. And they would teach me about how dead I was inside, because I had to go back and relearn feelings, and I had to really understand the depth of what that drug had what it did to me, and how it hardened my heart in so many ways. And they would teach me about my feelings. Now, the thing is, this was not an easy concept to understand. It took voices that I hear that commented on my internal state of being. And that's huge. It's I can't imagine a technology that can do that on such subtle, on such just small shifts in how I'm feeling. They would make comments. And so the mind boggles. It's like, what can do this? What can actually make a comment about that? Because these comments are not from me. As a therapist, I use the term ego dystonic. It is not of me. It is something else. And excuse me, I'll tell you a story that really, for me, put the nail in the coffin in terms of this not being me. Early on, as I began hearing the voices, it was a process, and it started where I actually thought it was the neighbors. I was living in a beautiful apartment in New York City, and I heard something from behind the wall. And so I thought, just like you would hear something behind a wall, somebody speaking, I thought it was somebody speaking. Well, as this progressed, I would respond verbally, and they would respond back in my head, or what I thought I was hearing at the time. But it sank slowly deeper and deeper and deeper into my head. So at first it was way up here and it sounded like a voice, but then as I would respond, I would whisper and I would get softer and softer and softer, and they would still respond until finally all I would do is think and they would respond. And so at that point I knew, okay, so this is not just a voice from around the corner or the hall. As it progressed from there, it descended deeper and deeper and deeper. I could feel it moving deeper and deeper into my brain, until at one point I remember I was here and I had moved to California at that point, and I was in the pool, and the voices were moving the voice around inside my head, and I was following it, and I would track it with my awareness in terms of where it was in my head. I'm over here now. And then the sound came from over here, from up above my head, then down here. And so it was this amazing experience of getting to know and getting to understand these things. And because it's not just a one thing, it's not just one entity. It became multiple personalities that would come through. Early on, when I was back in New York, I had been hearing the voices for a while, and as being a therapist at the time, I thought, well, Karis, this is my subconscious. This is, there's a change in my brain chemistry or something that is causing my own thoughts or my own self to come through in a different way. Mm-hmm. Well, I had
classical. Sorry to interrupt, but that's the classical vision of it, right? Because they're going to talk about it more like hallucinations, and it's your own. Right. Like it's your own personality, and it's just you talking to you, but you think you're talking to somebody else. So your finding obviously is different than that.
Absolutely, 100% different. My mind went there. This is just part of me. But what I was encountering were strange occurrences, synchronicities that would happen on my computer or around me that related to what the voices were saying. Still not, totally. Evidence in terms of it being something other, until one day the voices, they basically see through my eyes and they report on everything I see and know. And so because I was having these strange occurrences with my computer where I would try to do something and my computer would crash or just odd things would happen, I thought, oh, well, they have some way into my computer. They're messing with the system. And I said, I wonder, because I knew the Wi-Fi password, I wonder if I had somebody come over and change the password to a password I don't know, would it block the voices? Would it block these beings out of my computer because somebody else had changed the password? So, and this was my thinking, right? So I had somebody come over. Now, I did not want to know the password because I didn't want to give it to what was inside of me. I vehemently just did not want to know. I didn't want to know any of the process. And so my friend came over, and he was sitting in one end of the house. I went into the other end of the house, went into the bathroom, was washing my hands. And one of the voices said to another voice that I was experiencing, he's changing the password to password. And that was new information. That was brand new information. And it was information I didn't want.
Right.
My friend was alone. He wasn't talking to anybody. This was absolute silence in the house, except for me washing my hands, not wanting to be anywhere near the place where the password was being changed. When I heard this, I went to my friend immediately and I said, are you changing the password to password? And he looks up at me and he says, yeah, how did you know?
Wow.
Now, this was information I heard in my head that was happening, that somebody else was about what somebody else was doing.
Right.
That to me very clearly said, no, this is not me. I don't know what my friend is doing, nor do I want to know. And these voices told me. So that was a big deal.
I just noticed a comment here. Hello to Jay. He says, according to my healing modality, we all have entities attached through past agreements made when vulnerable. What do you think of that, George? Can you resonate with that? Does it feel like it's some kind of agreement?
You know, the agreement comes up again, and I had many years in my life where I did not have a spiritual practice, where again I feel, as I said before, I felt like kind of religion turned me away, and I was kind of on my own. Everything was very concrete and very, you know, with this world, it was, you know, this computer and, you know, it's my hand and this shirt, you know, and that's it. And there wasn't a spiritual world for me. And so there's a lot of things that have opened up to me, and agreements is something that has come into my consciousness recently, and it's a new idea for me, and it's something that's interesting in terms of how do we enter these agreements and how do we come into these connections with other beings in terms of what we do and how we go through the world. So I'm sorry that the question just left, but
oh, here, I'll put it back up. Oh, I went too fast.
Yeah, made when vulnerable. You know, there was what I feel what was happening is my vulnerability became vulnerable because I was, again, using something to destroy myself. There was something interesting that I read recently about this human body, that this vehicle that we're using as we go through this life is something that we need to use to care for and tend to the soul that is within us. So that was an interesting thought. And again, it's a little off of the agreement, but
I love that point, though.
Yeah, it's interesting because I thought, well, you know, I didn't do anything to anybody else. What I did to myself. And why are these things attacking me? Why am I getting this kind of response when all I did to myself? But then it really opened my mind of how, no, I'm doing something to this soul that it has a beauty and a part of that is a part of God. And so if I'm doing this to myself, I'm doing this to God, and that's not. I look back at my behaviors and some of the things that I was doing, and it was just, you know, it was horrific at times. You know, even though it wasn't, you know, hurting somebody physically, you know, and
yeah, if I could share something, a parallel experience when I was told I wasn't going to survive after a second diagnosis of cancer, and it pushed me to that point of inward turning to really see, you know, what was going on, and it was so clear to me that because it seemed up until then, it was almost 3 years, and it seemed up until then I was fighting for saving my physical body. But at that moment, I realized, no, it was all about my soul. And the body, like, of course, yes, it's nice to hold on to it because this houses the soul for a time, and you can do a lot of amazing work here. I'm not putting it down. But I knew that I needed to turn my attention full time to protecting my soul. And that helped me make some incredibly hard decisions. I was being told I needed a stem cell transplant. And I saw that half the people die a gory death doing a stem cell transplant. And never mind the year of isolation you go through, and they almost kill you to take your stem cells. And like, anyway, all the gore. And they were pressuring me, and the family was pressuring me, and they, like, it's your only chance. You have to do this. You're going to die like this. And so then all of a sudden it's between me and my soul. I'm not listening to my family. I'm not listening to doctors anymore. I'm just having this talk with my soul, and my soul knew, you know what, that violence, the soul doesn't need to go through that. And I couldn't know if it was my time to die or not, but I decided, you know what, I would rather die of this cancer, knowing what I know now, rather than go through the violence. And that's not to the body, that's the soul suffers. Do you have that experience as well?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There was something inside of me that I got in touch with, that the voices helped me get in touch with, that we use the word soul. We use the word that I say spiritual body, you know, very similar. That that at times it was interesting because at times I would feel my soul cry, and my outward body was stoic. And yet I would feel the tears, and I would feel my soul cry. And yet what I did is I steeled myself, and I hardened my heart again at those times, because there were lessons that I didn't want to let through, because my soul was crying, and to listen to that would have been incredibly painful and would have made me cry. And well, do I want to cry? And am I going to cry? Well, no, I'm a man. I can't cry. I got to be strong. There was a back and forth that I went through, because I feel like on one hand, I really am going through this journey of fighting these voices in different ways. And on another hand, there are experiences that I've gone through that I hold on to that are absolutely beautiful, that I feel I've been touched and blessed by things that we may call angels. If I may share that one experience.
Please do.
I turned to prayer and began to open myself up to reading the Bible. It was something that you have to read the Bible, and and they taught me how to read the Bible, and I would be going through something internally, and I would open the Bible, and there in front of me was what I needed to read at the time, these synchronies, and it was beautiful, and it was mind blowing. Now again, I have to remind you, I had no connection with the church, no connection with a strong spirituality for many, many, many years of my life. And so the Bible was something I could say was fairly new for me. And it was interesting because the voices told me when I was in New York, they said, remember the one whose name has been forgotten. When I heard that the first time, I thought, remember the name of the one whose name has been forgotten. Who could that be? And I thought maybe it was the name for the woman that I was hearing. I thought maybe it's related to the devil, the mother of Satan, and it was this very dark, what does that have to do? But as I came to California, as I began my healing, I realized, and it hit me, the one whose name had been forgotten was Jesus. Now, again, I go back to being absolutely truthful, and I would say to the voice, I would say, I don't have a relationship with Jesus. I don't know Jesus. And my hand to God, I went out one day to the pool to pray, and I got down on my hands and knees. And as I was saying, I want to learn about Jesus, my gaze shifted to the water on the pool, and floating on top of the water were the petals of the razzleberry flower, which are these straight little petals, and they were covering the top of the pool. And there, as I said, I want to get to know this person named Jesus, there, right next to me, was a perfect letter J made out of the petals of this flower. Now, it wasn't a kind of a J. It was at least 7 of these petals that were perfectly in alignment and the curve of the J. And I looked at that, and my jaw dropped.
Wow.
And I hold on to that moment, because it was one of the most powerful things that said, somebody intervened in a big way in my life, and I feel so blessed in so many ways. And I think about this experience of seeing that J, and it was mind blowing that I go out to pray and say, I don't have a relationship. I want to get to know Jesus. And I look down, and there in the pool is the letter J right next to me. So, I'm not somebody who has encountered miracles or synchronicities or things like this in my life. It's just, again, I was very concrete, and to have that happen, it was like, and then I looked, as I went through this experience, these things would happen all the time. And, I would see bushes move, in ways that would show pictures, and I would see, the sheets, the folds in the sheets, and see images, and things would come through for me. And it was just one thing after another of seeing how this world in some ways fits together. And as I get further and further in my healing and my spiritual healing, I see less and less of this. But I realize, looking back, that again, that line, that veil, that spiritual body, that line between this world and the other world, our spiritual world, was very, very thin, and things were coming through for me constantly. And these voices, they are still part of my experience. And the way that I know I'm on the right track is manyfold, but for the fact that I'm simply, during the course of the day, I'm having more peace of mind, because these voices were an intrusion and they took away my peace. I had none. And as I heal and as I tend to my spiritual body, I'm finding more peace, and I'm able to move through life, with a sense of gratitude. And about, having that peace. And it's funny, because the voices told me one time, they said, gratitude makes you invisible to them. Now, they often talk about us and them. And so what they're delineating is separateness of being. It's other entities. And what came through for me was that when you have gratitude in your heart, the demons can't see you. And so what was always a very, very big part of my healing was holding love in my heart, was going through these feelings and having these feelings and holding love in my heart, because when I held love in my heart, it was generally more a positive communication that would come through. When I hold gratitude in my heart, they said, they cannot see you, they meaning the demons. And I feel like I was attacked and really taken down in many ways by these entities who would bring up my past experiences and would bring them up to wear me down and to take me to a place of fear. And if you're going through your day, and if you're just doing your normal daily activities, you're not going to be gripped with a sense of fear. But these voices, they would take me back there and they would hold me in fear. And it was a process of fighting against that and fighting against the fear that no, something's not going to come and take me away. That no, that's not going to happen. And I had to fight through that. And I had to get to a place where I could understand love in my heart and hold love in my heart. And these things would literally affect how I felt. They would put a grip on my heart at times. Other times they would enhance how I was feeling. So I was really feeling, whatever it might be, whether it's anger or whether it's love or whatever. But they had an effect on my felt state. There was another interesting story. I live with my mother and her husband. He's blind and he's 93 years old. Well, when I moved in, my mother was in the hospital for 3 months, and so I was caring for him. And he would see visions. He's totally blind, but he would see visions of people coming through the bedroom at night. And as we got to bond, and we're having this time, I'm caring for him, making breakfast in the morning. He would tell me about these visions he was having of people coming through his bedroom at night. Well, it was pretty regular occurrence, and it was pretty much the same 2 or 3 people who were these adults coming through the bedroom at night. Well, here I am going through hearing these voices and kind of at a real active phase of my process of this experience. And so one night I laid down, and there was this one entity I call Town Crier, and he was a young man, around 18 years old or something like that. And I called him Town Crier because he was a typical 18-year-old. He would yell and scream, and he would get really emotional, and it was this cute character, this kind of fun, crazy, loud, Well, Town Crier and I was laying on the bed, and Town Crier and I were having this discussion, but he was outside the house. And so I get up out of the bed and I go to the garage, and I open the garage door, and Town Crier, the voice, came into the room, and I felt him in the room with me. I closed the garage door, and I slipped out of that room. I was in the laundry room, and I left the light on, and Town Crier began screaming, no, don't leave me in here. The light's on. Don't leave me in here. The light's on. And I'm hearing this in my head. So I opened the door, and Town Crier, I felt this entity enter my body. And I go and I lay down on the bed, and he and I had this battle inside my body where this entity was squeezing my heart. I felt like I was being attacked by Town Crier. And so we were having this energetic wrestling inside my body. And at one point I took all my will and I forced him out and pushed him out of my body. All this was done in complete silence. I never said anything verbally. This was all what I heard in my head. What I felt in my body. The next morning I get up and I'm cooking breakfast, and my stepfather comes out, and I said, hey, good morning, how are you? I asked him, as I had on so many other occasions, I said, oh, did you see the visions? Did anybody come through your bedroom last night? And he said, yeah, but it was somebody different last night. And I said, why was it different? And he says, well, it wasn't the two adults I usually see. It was a young boy. Wow. Now I had said nothing to him. He had heard nothing. My experience with Town Crier and with this entity that I dealt with inside my body was real for me and is real for me. And he sees these phantom visions. He's completely blind. And I have an experience with a young boy. I never mentioned Town Crier to him. And then he gets up that night. He gets up the next day and says, I saw a young boy go through this room last night.
Amazing.
To me, it was just so solid that what we're dealing with in this unseen world is real, is so real. And, these experiences of really understanding our connection to what is unseen is so important. And I feel like, I'm a perfect example of how I have taken this for granted my entire life. Up until this experience, I have taken all of this for granted. And what I do now is I've learned about my spiritual body and about what do you do to care for your spiritual body. And when these things attack you, when they come at you, there are ways that you can defend yourself, and there are ways that you can heal yourself. And Jerry and I have talked often, and he's really good because he's done so many studies of people where these entities are attacking and really coming at you strongly, and they run specific patterns. And some of the stories that I talk about of my experience really show that this is real. That the voices I hear are not just hallucinations, something that your mind makes up. That they're not part of myself, part of my personality that comes through. No, these are real beings that are around us all the time that we don't see, and that interact with us in so subtle ways that we don't even know. And Beth, one thing I love about your work is that your hero's journey and the archetypes talk about how we change and how our perspective shifts. If you understand an archetype, then you can understand your behavior. These things they affect how you think. And one of the early lessons that the voices gave to me is they said, I have to turn everything positive. You have to turn everything positive. And so what would happen is I would be attacked with something negative. They would tell me something negative, and I would have to turn that around truthfully into something positive. And
describe that. You talked to me about this, and describe an example if you could.
Yeah, it was, gosh, it was so interesting. I had this amazing experience of working in a jail for a summer, and what I did is I ran groups for the inmates, and there was one of them who was a Satanist, and I was curious, and I just said, I was very open and receptive. I said, tell me about it. What does that mean for you? What does that mean? And so I had this conversation with this Satanist, and then right next to him was this fervent Christian. And so the three of us had this fascinating conversation. And it was so interesting because what I've learned is that in Christianity, you think of the other. You know, I'm living for you. What we are all connected. And so we live for others. And then in Satanism, it was selfish. It was, no, I'm living for myself. And that was the perspective. It wasn't about evil. It wasn't about, just killing or doing, horrible things. It was about being selfish. Mm-hmm. And I have to say, in my addiction, I was incredibly selfish. I was the hedonist archetype that you talk about. I really related to. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
But so what I did is I got the Satanic Bible, and I wanted to go through it and read it, and the voices came at me and they attacked me and they said, "You're a Satanist. You don't believe in God." And I said, "No, I do." And they said, "You're praying to Lucifer." And I said, "No, I'm praying for Lucifer, because every angel that falls should be prayed for."
Whoa.
And that turnaround was so gigantic, because it shocked the voices. They couldn't believe it. It like sent them reeling, because what they did is they came at me and they attacked me, causing me doubts, causing me to test my faith, causing me to think that what I was doing, simply out of curiosity and trying to expand my understanding, on both sides of the equation, both positive and negative, that they were trying to tear me down, to take me away from it. Mm-hmm. And I said, "No, I'm not praying to Lucifer. I'm praying for him, because everybody needs to be lifted." And there's this beautiful prayer in the Jewish Siddur. I pray out of the Jewish Siddur, because the prayers are absolutely beautiful, and they're praying and they're prayers directly to God. And there's this one Zukif Kufufim. I speak a little bit of Hebrew, and now, and I'm so blessed that I got to practice. And Zukif Kufufim is to lift up the fallen. And when you think of these angels that fell from grace, you pray for them that they are lifted. And there was this incredible vision I had, amazing vision. I was in my room one day, and the voices were teaching me to move slowly, and to move extremely slowly. It was a form of Tai Chi, a form of movement meditation. And at one point, I was envisioning the earth, and it was unstable, and it was shaking like this in my vision. And I'm moving my hands and shaping the earth and watching this shake and tremble. And I feel it was a representation of kind of who I was at the time. I was not steady. I was not stable. And then there was this moment where incredible wings came out of the back of me. And next to the wings were all these people. And it was this lifting up. And I looked up, and there was this white light that went up into a cross. And it was just this incredible experience of that vision representing our connection with all people and how we lift people up. And again, Zukif Kufufim is something that we thank God for lifting us up each day, and lifting us up out of our wherever we're at. And I think one of the things that's been so important in this process, in this experience that I've been going through, is that it has shown me the connection that we have with all people. And you started this interview off by talking about putting this information out there to help others. And I come from a place of, I'm speaking the truth. I actually heard these things. These things spoke to me. They taught me. They shared with me. They molded me. They attacked me. And I'm just sharing those experiences in a way to help other people, in a way that if you hear voices, maybe you can speak out also. Because when I was attacked, some of the patterns that the voices would run are, they said early on, they said, don't talk about this. Don't talk about this. Don't share, don't, you know, and it's a psychological way of pulling you away from people. And so for me, I was like, well, no, I'm a therapist, you know, I'm going to talk about it. And you know, I was blessed that I could share this with my family. And I said from the beginning, I have to be truthful. I have to tell you what I'm hearing. This is new to me. You know, I'm hearing voices. And what would happen is they would try to contain me. The voices would try to pull me away from people. And they would, you know, again, they're talking, they're trying to pull me down. And as soon as I would share this with other people, with my mother or my sister, because at the beginning it was just my close family, the fear went away. So when I talked about it, when I shared what was happening, the attack went away. And I think that you're right, that people who hear voices do deal with shame, and they do deal with fear, because immediately when you say, I hear voices, people are going to say, oh, you're crazy. Well, you know, it's so interesting because at Temple one day, the rabbi.
Can I interrupt quickly? Just there's a couple of points I would love to answer to, and I'm going to absolutely let you go. And then I'm also going to invite you in the chat, you guys, if you have questions. And there's a couple of good comments I know we missed. So if it's not a trouble, George, the one thing I want to say that was so beautiful about your discovery, like when they said when there was that attack and it said like you're a Satanist, and then you were able with your faculties, your intelligence, your whole spiritual body to be, to me, why that was so powerful is your precision. Like you could see the truth, you could see the lie, and you could like walk that razor's edge. I don't know if I'm you know, paraphrasing your experience properly here or not, but to me, precision is an enormous key. Because everybody knows that they're dealing with something, but it comes at you like a wall. And by having the level of curiosity and fascination that you have, that to me is just such an ingredient. If you could give that to people, that would be amazing. But you know, chances are you have to come up with it on your own. When you get to that precise place, this is how I saved my life exactly, by locating the exact place I was stuck, where all my energy, or not all of it, because and I didn't even finish with it. It was just such a big pocket of stuck energy. Once I identified it, it was clear as day to me. It's like, wow. And just by seeing it, half the shadow was gone. I reclaimed my life energy overnight. I didn't have to sleep to feel what I got back in my own. So I totally love how at the level that you're working, it's so that precise, you know, it's just my diagnosis that person has served you so well to, you know, because otherwise you could just like, no, you're wrong, get away. And that doesn't work with entities, right?
No, not at all. You have to come at them logically, you know, because what I held on to from the beginning was the truth will set you free. And so for me, the truth had to be spoken, and I could not lie. In fact, there was a couple slips where I either didn't say something, so there was a lie of an omission, and they jumped on it because I was being so truthful, and that I had this lie of omission. They jumped on it and they went to attack me, and then I had to go. And then that lesson taught me about forgiveness, because I had to go and I had to work through that process with the person who I had kind of done that lie of omission with. And then there was a forgiveness, and then it went away. And so it taught, you know, just, you know, even that attack taught me something about the process. And, you know, I have to say, the archetype of the child helped me, because the child is wonderment. The child wants to know. And that I held on to the child within me. And to this day, I still hold on to that child archetype.
You can't get rid of it.
Yeah. So important, you know, and I feel like there's a childlike trust I have with that God inside of me, with that connection to God inside of me. And now I feel that so much stronger, and feel like my spiritual body has strengthened. And even now, as we're speaking, I can barely hear what I used to hear, which before was, you know, a constant barrage. And now it's very different, very different.
If I could offer one more thing. So one of the ways that I survived mentally and psychically through my ordeal, because I don't know if you've had this experience where you're just laid up. You know, my body was useless to me. There came a time where I couldn't even sit up. My hands I couldn't use anymore. I was totally being looked after. And I had an experience of, you know, it seemed small, but because my environment could only come at me, I didn't have any control over my environment. If something was happening, I couldn't just pick up and leave. I had to do something with it. So, you know, it seems like a trite example, but it's so powerful. And I used it the other day. It still works. That so I'm living in suburbia with my family. I had to move out of my own home, sell my home. I was living in my parents' book room. And we're in suburbia. The lawnmowers go off, right? And they're going off in concert. So the first guy mows his lawn, and it reminds the next guy to mow his lawn. And after he's almost done, the next guy starts mowing his lawn. And you know, at the time, it was an irritation to me. It's just like, I just want peace. I want quiet. I want to be able to go inside. And I was fighting with it, kind of like fighting with voices, although, you know, obviously that's different. And so what I did, and I'm wondering if this is similar to you, what I did is I learned to sing with the lawnmowers or sing with the offensive noise. I would use my brain to go and say, okay, what exactly are the tones that I can find in that motor? Or the combination thereof? What are the tones? And then I would treat it like a drone, and I would sing to it. And at the times, sometimes I wasn't strong enough to sing with my voice. I would sing in my head along with it. I did it to the jackhammers the other day. I had, I don't know, 5 different sets of trucks around my whole place. They were changing everything. And I started to sing to it. And what would happen to me, you can probably guess, is incredible happiness would come into my system. I would forget completely that they were an offensive noise to me. And then when they were finished, I'd be like, what? You're done now? I'm still singing over here. I still want that drone. You know, so it completely transformed my voice. And I finally realized that it's the difference between being able, like having your life just come at you and being able to harmonize with your experience, whether that's inner or outer. That harmony, all of a sudden, it becomes something of beauty. Right? Like it becomes a joyful thing. Can you relate to that harmonizing with your voice?
Absolutely. You know, it makes me think the vision comes to me of the blade of grass bends with the wind. It does not fight it. And that's
what kind of harmony. Amazing.
Yeah. You know, and it's when there was an incredible aspect of saving grace that I embraced early on. And that was, if there is a higher power that is coming through in my head, I didn't have control of it. You can't just not listen to the voices. You can't. When somebody who hears voices talks about it, it can be a horrific experience because it's your internal world. And I had no control over volume or anything. What I had control over was my behavior. And what I began to see was that the level of the voices responded to me tending to my spiritual body. And what I did early on was I accepted the voices. And there was an acceptance of like, okay, this is the wind coming at me. I can't fight it. I can't, and as soon as I would fight it or try to push against it, they would enhance my feelings. And it was like 10 times 10 times 10, my anger would go up. And I realized, no, you can't fight it. What you have to do is you have to listen to it, and you have to learn from it and understand it. And then later on, as the voices got weaker, there were other things that I did where I could block out. You know, I think that turning around into a positive, what you did with the lawnmowers was brilliant. You know, again, you want to meditate, and you go and you get ready to meditate, and all of a sudden the lawnmower goes off and you go, you know, and you can't fight it. But I teach yoga, and I teach yoga. Oh, awesome. I love it. I love kindred spirit. And, I teach yoga in the park. And so when we're outside and we're beginning with a meditation and we're opening up to what's around us, and then you'll hear a car horn or a motorcycle drive by or a car blaring its radio. And now I know, I just accept it. It's not that my meditation requires silence or peace or the sound of the wind. It is life. It just is. And when we begin to think of what does it mean to be in opposition to something? I always go back to that blade of grass. You're not in opposition. Don't be in opposition to the universe. I layer on God. God has a plan. And like, if you work with it, if you flow with it, then you're taken on a journey, and it may not be what you expect. I never expected to be hearing voices or talking like this on a talk show, but here I am. And here's this experience. And I think of myself as just this human, this form that is on the spiritual path that now I'm much better attending to my spiritual side, to my soul, to my higher being, whatever you want to call it. Because what happens is when I don't tend to that spiritual side, and I struggle, I'm not, I'm not perfect, but the voices come back louder. And I really see this as a way that I can gauge the strength of my spiritual integrity.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. I also am very much reminded of the warrior archetype because, and I was telling this to a dear client earlier today, that the things that are coming at you, in your case, voices, I was describing an experience, and my audience knows this, that I've been through a little bit of hell with the whole COVID thing. And my family has seen me be outspoken in a way that doesn't agree with their opinions. And then I went on a camping trip with them, and I was ostracized, and I was basically punished, and I was pushed out to a great extent of the family. Some people wouldn't look at me. They withheld love. I was literally doing my own campfires alone at night when I realized I was not welcome. And I was prepared for this. This isn't my first rodeo. And I've been through this, and I know my family, and I really prepared, and I did this work, and I did this work, and I did this work. And I showed up feeling quite free. I felt free to, if they didn't receive me, I was free about that. And if they received me and wanted to connect, I was also free about that. I had none of that push and pull going on. And it didn't stop it from taking me to the next level. So, the whole new level of stuff came up for me. But what I was able to do in the end, and I saw it when I got home, there was a couple of more big hammers came down, messages from family and being totally slammed by my nephew and cut off, saying he never wants to hear from me again. This is a child that I have supported intensely through his own major trials and tribulations when everybody else cut him off. Anyway, that's my complaint. Obviously not totally past that. But so the hammer had fallen. And I'm waiting for the crush, and I'm waiting for the devastation, and I'm actually open. I'm saying, okay, if there's anything that wants to come up, you want to cry, anything, and I'm just going like, not there. And what I realized is that I was able to take the energy given me. It was all energy, whether they avoided me or they smiled at me or they were kind or they weren't kind. It was all energy. I was able to receive all of it, and I came out the other side with more enthusiasm, more power for my mission, with more conviction. They gave me so much energy, and they're still giving it to me. They're still giving me energy. And yet it's not the love and the hugs and the acceptance and the recognition that I think I want. But when I don't fight it, when I don't fight the wind, then the wind is in my favor.
It's beautiful, wonderful, yeah, and I think that is one of those beautiful aspects of your archetypes and the work that you do with archetypes is that transformation. We want to be in control of life, and I think the big fallacy is we're not. And life throws us stuff, and what do you do when you get it? Are you going to fight it and say no? That's no, I have cancer. No, I don't have cancer. Well, you do, and now what? And you transmuted it, and you changed it into something that saved your life. And I think that's what this process, my own experience of these voices, them coming at me negatively, with horrible things at times, and going through that same transmutation of turning it around into something positive, and then they had no power. And I grew from that and learned from that. And so, there are a lot of patterns that the voices can throw at people. And I think that one of them that most people respond to is, don't talk about us. Don't share any of this. And I think that one needs to be dispelled right away. Talk about it. Say everything the voices say. Share it with somebody, a therapist, a loved one, or somebody. But absolutely talk about it. Their voices push for control. They want to be in control of you. And I see this similarity because we want to be in control of our life. And so there's this duality that's happening all the time. The voices came to me and said, we have to be in control of you. And I said, no, I'm in control, but it's all a fallacy. And we did this dance and we went back and forth and back and forth. And what happened is there were times when I said, okay, you're in control, and all of a sudden I was doing what I wanted, it took the energy away from what I was hearing. And what I was hearing when it's an attack, what I hear, it would lower my vibrational frequency. It would take me to fear, shame, remorse, guilt, all these horrible feelings. And I had to turn it around into something positive, just like we're talking about, transmute it to raise back up and to be able to hold on to love, gratitude, and humility. And I struggle with these at different times, but now I can go through my day and I can walk down the hall and I can go, oh, I'm dead inside. Or I can encounter somebody and in the course of a conversation saying, you're not caring about them, or you're not being compassionate about them, or you're not listening to them, you're not with them, you're being selfish. And so my own selfishness is transmuted by things like compassion and love. And when the Bible and God talks about the greatest of these is love, it's really, to me, shows so true that when you have love for yourself, or when you have love for the voices that you're hearing, it changes it, because if they're trying to tear you down, they're trying to tell you something. They're trying to tell you something about yourself. And if you resist that, and if you push against it, you're not going to get anywhere, and it's going to be worse, and it will tear you down, and early on, I attempted suicide at one point, and there was this horrible fantasy that went through my head that the voices were part of, and I stopped it, and it was part of not going through it and aborting at the last minute was because of the connection with all people, and that I saw people around me, and I saw lives of others, and I was seeing other people in ways that, no, I can get through this, that I am connected to others, and that this reason right here today is part of me being here, and is part of sharing how we transmute things, and just supporting the work that you're doing, Beth, which I think is wonderful, with your archetypes, and how do we use these archetypes to do that, to turn around what we're experiencing from something negative into something that is a positive.
Thank you so much for that. And I love your point that you're making over and over again about connection and transparency and truth and sharing the inner experience, because this is something that I saw from what I thought was my deathbed. I didn't die. Then, in fact, surrendering to death, I no longer fought with death. I'm like, okay, you can have me. I'm done. Just take me. I'm yours. And instead of dying, you'll read this in my book if you like. Instead of dying, I saw through death. I saw that it wasn't what it threatened me with, annihilation. I saw that even if my body was gone in that moment, that there I was, completely effulgent, practically made of joy. I couldn't be happier. And it's at a point in my life I had nothing. I lost my career, I lost my house, I lost my car. I was deeply in debt. I had no promise of life whatsoever. I'd just been through 11 months of brutal chemotherapy. The doctors were not hopeful for how things were going. And here I was, so joyful, I couldn't stand it. And I realized at that point that joy depended on nothing, that it was actually who I am. But more deep than that was that I saw I was here for a reason, and I didn't get out of it. So if I was to let my body go now, or however that works, like you said, we're not really in control of that part. But if I was to die now, then I would just have to come back and do this all over again. That this work remained on my plate. And the next level of it was seeing that purpose was intimately tied with connection. In fact, I say it now that purpose and connection are the same thing. There's no way to have purpose in isolation. That's divorced. That is that empty thing that you've talked about, that everybody has that empty experience. And that's where, it's kind of where humanity's at right now, getting more and more divorced from itself. My week so far has been a little bit low energy, but then last night I get together for a new moon fire to make very beautiful, palpable relationships of mutual support and love, and praying to God with the land, bringing the land alive. Well, I stayed up until 3 a.m. and I'm going, God, you cannot make me go to bed. Like, there was just so much beautiful energy, and in silence, not all, like ramped up kind of energy. I went to sleep very easily. But I was just drinking in the beauty of the connection and the depth of purpose that it represents. So I can't remember the point I was going to make, but I wanted to share all that with you.
No, I love that, because yes, when the spirit fills you, I love the word spirit. You are filled with energy, and I never thought about it like I do now. That when we turn these things around into a positive, when we're in aligned, when we're grateful, prayers are about gratitude, and when we're loving, and when we're thinking of others, which is that connection with all things. It sounds, sometimes it can sound so simple, but it's so powerful. And this experience has really taught me that. How the voices came through loud and clear at the very beginning. They said, you can't live for yourself anymore. You're not living for yourself. Everything you do is for another. And I fought it, and I was like, no, there's certain things I want to do for myself. But then I really saw how it plays out, and how when I am living for others and doing for others, energized, invigorated, filled with spirit, filled with energy, and we become part of a flow, part of a process that is greater than us. And I think in this time that we can look at COVID and we can say it's horrible, it's killing people, it's worse, we're all isolated, and there's some very kind of big conceptual frightening things going on that we need to turn around, and we need to say to ourselves, no, this is giving me the time to understand how I have taken things for granted, how I have stepped away from things like prayer, and I've stepped away from the spiritual body, and we are very concrete and very scientific. And this experience I had has shown me that no, life is not concrete. It is so much more than we see. So much more than we see. And there's some truths, intrinsic truths, that are real. And you can look at, we use all kinds of different words. You can look at it and say angels and demons. You can look at it and say spirits. You can look at it and say energy. And again, everything does come at you energetically. And however you want to look at it, if you can find these ways of mutating your own experience into something that is enlivening, that is life-bringing, then you're on the right track.
Mm-hmm. Amazing. That's so good. So we're starting to wind down a little bit. I just want to be mindful of your time. And if there are people in the chat that have questions, could you type them in capital letters, just so they are really jump out at me and I'll be able to see them. So George was willing to answer questions if anyone has. I know there's a lot of good comments in here that have gone by. I've been seeing some, and I'm going to go back over and savor them with my coffee after we're done. But I would love to ask you about two things that I always talk about with my guests. And one of them is the situation between men and women on this earth, and the masculine and the feminine archetypes. And have you spent any time looking into that? Is there anything in your own process of healing that you've noticed about those two energies that you want to share with us?
It's interesting that you say that, because here I am as a gay man, and some other cultures talk about the being gay as having two spirits. And I really feel like that this two spirit concept of having both masculine and feminine has been incredibly healing in ways that I can go back and forth and back and forth. And if something's not working for me as a man, I can access that female part of us. And I think it's a concept that everybody should embrace, and not just somebody who's gay, who's two spirit, but how do we bind ourselves in roles of gender identity, in roles of being masculine? Men can't cry, men are strong, men are this and that, but and not women. Women can cry. You are emotional and you're soft and weak, and those things bind us, and they hold us back for being as flexible and as big as we can get. And I think that slowly over time we move through time, and women become so much more than just these gender stereotypes. And I think a lot of what the LGBTQ movement has done is to challenge gender roles and challenge orientations, and to challenge how we see ourselves. And we each one of us are very different, and we can access different parts of ourselves. And I think the more fluid, the more pathways to access you open yourself up to. As a man, one of my big hurdles was crying. And no, I can't cry, I'm strong. And that's still difficult for me, but I try to think of that and access that in different ways of being softer and accessing it through the feminine side. And I find myself more able to be open and receptive to that, and that's okay. And I think we all need to think of culturally and how our differences are there to help us understand each other. You may not hear voices, but I think there's so much in this interview about what
I hear voices.
Yeah.
I hear voices. All your voices. I think I don't want to minimize it, but I think we're all hearing voices. I call it programming. It's saying, like, Beth, you're gonna die. It's saying, Beth, you're never going to amount to anything. It's saying, Beth, you're useless. Like, it's, I got voices. I've come a long way with the voices, and I don't hear this like, you should kill yourself voice anymore. I don't hear that one anymore. Amazing. Like, yay, that's progress. But I think it's beautiful what you're saying. I think we are all two spirit too. I think we're all two spirit, and it has less to do. Now, this might be cause for another conversation, so I won't keep too long with this. But I think it's less to do with culture, less to do with our actual behavior, and more to do with our relationship to ourself, because the true transmutation is starting, like, the whole hero's journey begins with the masculine and the feminine archetype ceasing to be two. They come together. They were never, to realize they were never separate. There's a marriage, and you have a third thing now. And the third thing gives birth to the child. That's what the man and the woman, or the masculine and the feminine, they come and they give birth to the child. And that sets the entire journey off. A whole trajectory happens because of this marriage. And so when, and I think maybe we shouldn't go super deep into it right now, but we all have to do this work. And the one thing I really admire about you, I hope you take this the right way, is that I couldn't have guessed that you're gay. So I just couldn't have guessed it, because I can feel that your energy is very balanced. So a lot of people in that movement, I know I'm off on a limb here and I might get killed, but a lot of it that I've been in contact with, I sense a major imbalance. And what I discovered for myself in my own imbalance was that I was so fighting my own inner masculine that on the outside, I was hyper masculine. People would call me a ball breaker. I was, I just had this intense energy. My relationships all failed because of it. Just, nasty. It wasn't until my dad died that I was forced again to really look into that masculine and see it and stop hating it, stop blaming it for all of the world's problems. And guess what? I didn't come out of it more masculine for having embraced that. I came out of it more feminine. I came out of it softer. I came out of it ultimately more balanced, equal access to that. If I need that masculine energy, it shows up for me without even having to think on it. And same with the feminine. There's just more balance, and I see it in you. So I hope that made any sense at all.
No, thank you. Yeah. I think finding balance in everything is part of our journey. Finding balance in everything, and with me, it's been trying to find the balance of what I hear and what has come in, and finding a peace at that. And just before we wrap up, there's some kind of hard and fast points I wanted to make for those of you who for anybody out there who struggles with, who gets into places where they are hearing voices and are contending with these things. And I think a big part of our discussion today was about being that blade of grass and bending with the wind, and I think that conceptually is great, but there are some real hard and fast concrete things that can be helpful. So I just put some of that out there. I feel like attending to your spiritual body is so important in whatever fashion that may be. And for me, it was really getting into and understanding religion, and many different religions. In fact, I mean, my God, I read the Satanic Bible, and I went to temple and read the Bible. And so all these things were really, really helpful, getting out there and having knowledge. 963 Hz, clear tones. Tones are so important. If you want to raise your frequency and kind of get the negativity out, 963 Hz is a clear tone, and it helps kind of push away the negativity. Stay clear of negative feelings. If you have a negative feeling or if you have a negative thought, consider that it might not be you. That it is part of what is around us and influencing us, and then you have a choice. You don't have to be that thought. You don't have to be whatever came into your head that's negative. No, choose the positive and turn it around. What the voices taught me is I would say, that's not me, that's not me. And then another very powerful one is I'm sorry, forgive me, thank you, I love you. So if I have a negative thought that would come in, I'm sorry, forgive me. And there's that forgiveness of sin. Thank you, I love you, and attunement to a higher vibration. So always ending on that, I love you.
Beautiful.
Talking about the voices, talking about your experience, put it out there. Do not be ashamed. Don't hide yourself away. Don't think that what you're hearing or seeing is weird. Alternative realities are out there, and there's thousands of people around the world, tens of thousands, who have alternative realities. We have differences, and I think our differences, if we put them out there, make us stronger, because it's all a part of a puzzle. So talk about it. There are all kinds of things that one would think would be common sense, like good diet, sleep well, exercise, being truthful, and meditation. All these things for me are ways to help my spiritual body, because these things are out there. They can attack you. They can put you in places where you're thinking, oh, are they talking about me? Or, everyone's talking about me, or I'm a horrible person. If your energy level is low, you can think of it as induced. You can think of any kind of negativity that you may be experiencing as induced. And what do you do with that? What do you do with that? How do you turn that around, transmute it into something positive? Again, we're not in control of things, but how can you find your way in this universe to get into the flow of what's going on around you? We all go through horrible crises in our lives. This was a very painful crisis that I went through. And it's not that I am denying it and said, no, that wasn't me. No, I have to embrace it and I have to be a part of it and to be able to go through it and put it out there. I think when we fall, Zukif Kufu Fim keeps coming back to me. It's again, we have the opportunity to rise up. And that is just so important, that don't look down on yourself as a failure. You can't. You look at that as an opportunity to rise up. And again, if something is coming at you negatively or horribly, or you're finding yourself in, being attacked by these entities, take a moment just to think, okay, what if this wasn't bad? How can I make this good? Just like you did with your cancer. Cancer is a horrible thing, but you found life in it. And I think both of our experiences really, really capture this opportunity in rising up again. And for those of you that are struggling with horrible things and even voices attacking you, it's an opportunity. You can rise up from it and you will heal. And I think that you have to find that capacity, that way of taking care of your spiritual body, and then not just your own spiritual body, but knowing that our spiritual body, it is part of each other, thinking of others, thinking of, how can I care for another person, and having that feed your spiritual body.
Amazing. So good. This has been a really enlightening, beautiful interview for me in particular. I mean, I from everything we're seeing in the comments, it's also been very profound for them. How do people, if they want to reach you, if they want to talk to you about what they're going through, I have to say one more thing. It's funny, the voices are telling me now I'm going to start talking about them like that. And what you're talking about also, when you hit that moment of that, you need to help others, that your life is primarily more about serving others than it is about fulfilling yourself. That was what I discovered too, that actually I'm already fulfilled with nothing. I didn't even have my body. I had no home, no career, no money, no nothing. And I found in total fulfillment was my true nature. And that is, I can forget that, but you never really forget it. And that is the precipice on the hero's journey. That is a major precipice where you say, okay, my life is in service. I give my life over. I live more for others than I do for myself. It's not about abandoning yourself. That's a total shadow, but that's the precipice of moving into the soul of the journey. And that direct relationship where you no longer ask a government what you should do. You no longer ask a doctor what you should do. You no longer ask a therapist what you should do, or a coach, or anybody. It's between you, your soul, and God. And that's it. And that's when you can step out and have this beautiful expression as you are, that is a beacon, I feel, to many. I hope we have several discussions like this, because I think there's lots for you and I to talk about. How do people reach you if they want to get in touch?
I like to be very accessible. I'm on Facebook. My name is printed there. It's a little hard to say the last name, but I'm accessible on Facebook. Jagatic, there you go, exactly. And please contact me. Send out a friend request. Send me a messenger, and I'd be happy to help you, give you some hints, tips, and tricks, and how to get through this life, how to be that blade of grass that bends in the wind, and not to worry about things. I love how you brought that up. Because if you trust inside, in that connection with God, because God's in all of us, is part of that. If you can really access that trust and know that you're going to come through this, that the worst thing in the world that you can imagine has happened, and we can all get through these things, and we will. And I believe we're going to come out in a very different way, and in a very strong way. We're gonna come out of this stronger.
I agree. We can use all of this energy like a sensei warrior. That use their attack against them if that's what in fact is happening. So
yeah.
God bless you, George. Your story is miraculous. Actually, it's so inspiring. I'm very grateful that you joined me here today.
Thank you so much, Beth. This has just been a pleasure. Thank you all for coming and watching. And really, we have to do this again. This is great.
Fantastic. That's really good. I will stay on for a couple of minutes, you guys, in the chat. So if you want to keep on chatting and have anything you want to talk to me about, George, I know you need to go, so I don't mind if you have to sign out.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody. And again, if you want to connect with me, no problem, and find me on Facebook, please do so.
One very quick last thing is that there's a writing that you wanted to share. So there's a special piece that represents a major transformation for George, and he was hoping to share it with us. So if you share it with me, I will share it with my people. How's that?
Yeah, thank you for remembering that. I did a short bio of my transition into hearing the voices and what they taught me and how they work with me. And so yes, I'm going to send that to you. It's 10 pages. It's phenomenal in terms of some of the things that have transpired. So definitely check that out. If you like what you heard here, check out this writing. It's not terribly long, but really, really rich and packed. So
okay, with permission, I'll post it right at my blog then.
Excellent.
Okay, fantastic. Have a good rest of your day. Yeah, talk soon. All right. Well, that was fun. Thanks, you guys, for being here. It's awesome. You're such a great community. I love you so much. Juan, sorry you missed it, but then you will be rewatching. Nice to see you, Ola from Canada. We're given new bodies when we die. Some go to the garden, some to the pit. Thanks, David. I appreciate your comment. Oh, David, nice to see you. We talked the other day. That's awesome. I got your email, and I think I didn't respond to you yet, but I appreciated very much having had a conversation with you. That was enlightening to hear your voice. This is something for me that if I hear somebody's voice, I feel like I can download enough information about them. You know, if I just see words on a text, I don't know anything about you. But as soon as I hear your voice, then I can get the thing. So trigger warning. Hello. Hi, how's it going? I'm so glad you're here. I saw your name pop up. It's great to have you here. And this is awesome. Is this a really good guy? I won't say his name in case he doesn't want me to tell you. And you're very welcome, David. Floyd Bingo wants to marry me. So I am single. Just wanted to let you know. I am single. Great show, he says. That's so good. God bless you and everybody that you know. All is given. Nachiketa said, all is given, all will be taken. Nothing ever belonged to you. We are merely tenants. Very true. Very true. Yep, that's humbling and keeps you grateful for everything good that does come your way, and even bad. Wasn't that amazing, George, talking about his experiences? I don't know if you noticed this, but the vast majority of his tone about his experiences is that they are a gift, right? He went through hell, absolute hell. He almost killed himself over it. And yet everything that he's saying now, it's coming to this place of gratitude for his experiences. Like, to me, wow, that's like a miracle. Thank you, Jay, for your gratitude there. I appreciate that. To see what you guys, I know there's some really good comments. Melanie had a couple of good comments. I couldn't jump in with them, unfortunately, but I want to go back to them. Michael said, grounding helps stop depression. Just walking barefoot does so much for you, removing the extra charge we get. I did this, was it just yesterday? Maybe it was the day before now. And I was feeling low. That new moon energy, I felt like it was kind of killing me. The life was getting sucked right out of me with that moon as it was waning. And I got myself out into the forest, and I'm walking on the path. And that was good already. I was in the forest. It was beautiful sunshine and cool shade inside there. And then I thought, you know what am I walking in these shoes for? I took my shoes off and I started walking in the Manitoba gumbo. And Manitoba gumbo is, it's sticky and it's full of clay. And when it's freshly wet from a rain, which it was, it is the most beautiful thing to walk on. It's cool and it's smooth. And it was so charging to me. It changed my complete state. And I went from feeling like that new moon was sucking the life out of me to being totally at peace with the low energy and the introspection and, the lack of action that happened for a few days there. It was really, I just needed to clean my house, actually, is what I ended up needing to do. Because, wow. Oh, Scott was here. I don't know if you're still here, but he said, we are essentially male and female. The God of this world separated them for his world of dualism. I totally am with you, Scott. He's a smart one. If you're looking for a coach with a lot of knowledge, Scott is somebody that I've worked closely with and I can highly recommend. Please look for him. Nachiketa, like women who are feminine, I have enough male energy. Yeah, exactly. A masculine woman is somebody that's not attractive to men. Oh, and here is my marriage proposal, Beth Martians. I'm not sure if that's a typo or you're saying something about where I come from. Not aware of that. Let's see. Jay said, certainly thoughts which rush in on waking to undermine and create anxiety. After owning them as my shadow side, less effect has taken the energy out. Yep, beautiful. That's amazing. And that's how I dealt with my own demons. I didn't want to tell my story today because I just wanted George to be able to say as much as he has to say. He's got so much to say. But this is how I deal with the actual entities that have come through. Maybe you saw my little post on Facebook today. I told that story. When I was waking up to the truth, I got demonic attacks, sometimes night after night after night, in the middle of the night when I was low, couldn't sleep. I couldn't be awake. I couldn't do anything. And demons would attack me. This is exactly how I would handle them, is to not, this is slightly different. I didn't own them as my shadow side because it's what George was talking about. He can prove they are outside entities coming at him, but you're still onto it, Jay, because I dealt with everything that was here about it, right? If I had fear of that entity, I released that fear. If I was resisting that entity, I released my own resistance. If I was angry at that entity or hating that entity or hating that I was going through it, I would deal with the hate here. I would release my own inner hate. And I could deal with those demons. I could finish with the experience in what felt like less than a minute. So it's beautiful. I owned my own experience. And in doing that, I had total control over it. 100% control. Plus, I called on Jesus quite a bit. And that worked really well. Floyd thought he was hearing voices, but that was just YouTube. I know YouTube can have that effect on you. We are all mad in here. Nachiketa said we are all mad in here. And madness is a road to enlightenment, right? That's why everybody's so scared of it, because they're going to get free that way. Everyone is hearing voices. David's right. Cry every day. That's excellent, Floyd. Good for you. That does help a lot. That's a big part of my work, is to help a man touch down with those very tender emotions. And they don't get less masculine from it. They get actually more masculine from touching down on the feminine. Kelly F.E., thank you for that, love. I totally appreciate it and feel the same way about you. Most of the doctors are enemies. That's true, David. Even if they don't mean to be, it's because of their environment. DQuest. Thanks for your comment at the very beginning. He said, Alice, I don't know if this is he or she, DQuest. Alice in Wonderland syndrome in children is the opening of the pineal gland. Interesting. That's why you're here today. I'd be curious to hear more about that, what that story is that you're referring to. Some things are not meant to be figured out. True story, Nachiketa. It doesn't matter how much you unravel the mystery. Then actually, the more you unravel the mystery, the deeper the mystery gets. It's a beautiful thing, in fact. So go ahead, unravel the mystery, because you just get deeper into it. Again, Nachiketa said, God must have some purpose to save us or let us go. Must be a lesson in there somewhere, but I find the whole process a mystery. I'm going backwards in the comments here. I like going backwards. Humor is definitely a way to deal with the family. Yep, you got it. If you can make A joke, you know why humor is so effective is because it's the energy of courage. If you're not courageous, you cannot be funny, cannot make a joke, and you certainly won't laugh at one. So once you're encouraged, you can do a lot of good healing and releasing and connecting. Eric doesn't fight the wind either. That's so good. Yep, the contrast strengthens us. It's very true. We can't do without it. You know, as much as you want to get rid of the shadow and get rid of the voices and get rid of the pain and move on, like you should, and that's good. But it is the shadow that brings us to that point. That's what pushed me up against the wall. It's what forced me to look at my life and see what was really happening. And one, you said you have to sit in your porch for at least 10 minutes and stare at the sunset as a meditation to complete the day. How perfect is that? To me, or for me, I'm a late night owl, and I sort of catch the sunset from my deck here, but mostly I catch the stars. I catch the firmament. I've been like, I'm starstruck. It's like I'm there with my best celebrity, or, you know, that I don't even follow celebrities, but I follow my own kind of celebrities, but it's been the stars, they're shining at me and speaking to me. I see them as heavenly bodies now after all the David Weiss interviews. They're heavenly bodies. They're not far away from me. They're right here in my world for me. I just feel like they're for me. And have you noticed, I don't know if these are planets. I'm totally ignorant as to I'm greatly ignorant to the heavenly bodies and their names and everything, but there are two, maybe they're planets, and they're shining at me. And I was looking at them so closely, and the center of them is dark. The light is all on the periphery. So I don't know if it's just how my eyes are seeing or what's going on, but I was counting the points of the stars. It's primarily a 5-pointed star on both of these bodies that what I was seeing. They have red rays. Is anybody else seeing this stuff? They have red rays, and there's primarily 5, but you can see like in between the 5, there's little pokes out, and then in the center, it's dark. So anybody else seeing this? Are they planets? They probably are. Is it Venus? And what's the other red one? Is Mars, I believe. And I think Mars was having a lot going on. There was so much people taking up the swords. Feels a little more peaceful out there. Yes, Floyd, do thumbs up before you go. I love it. I end up with a lot of thumbs up, and I'm very grateful for that. Also, the comments that come after in the comment section. I love the chat is beautiful, and the comments that come after in the comments section, I love those too. I love seeing and going back to those because people can't really watch the chat, or maybe you can. Maybe you can. So Juan said, let me see. Stars in the firmament are beautiful too, except it's rained like every evening, he said. Saturn and Jupiter, Sue. Thank you. Saturn and Jupiter. Okay, so they're not stars at all. They are planets. They just are twinkling. I've never seen planets twinkle like that. Yeah, Nachiketa is sensitive to everything. It's true. I'm in the same boat. I don't know why I'm living here in the middle of a city on the road, on the street, other than I love this place. It's close to my son. Speaking of which, I'm going to have to run in a few minutes to get him for a picnic. And thanks, Sandra. I showed your comment earlier, but I appreciate that. It is brave, and it was absolutely my pleasure to host George for this interview. All right, my dears. Well, this has been a pleasure. I think I'm going to start signing off for now. I wanted to let you know that my coaching certification program, if you haven't heard about it, is coming up starting in September. So there's still a little time to think about it. But if you'd like to have a conversation about what it would be like to go on that, to be on that precipice of living more for others. And guess what? When you live more for others, everything about you, all your growth and the process of healing accelerates for you. So when you set your sight on helping others, then it does nothing but goodness for your own path, your growth, and your traveling of your hero's journey. So if you'd like to have a conversation about that, please do put up your hand either in the chat here or in the comments, or you can message me on Facebook. Messenger is a good place to reach me. I don't stay on there or, if we want to have a private conversation, then we'll just get on the phone or something like that. But that's a good way to reach me. You can find me on Twitter, Facebook. I would love it if you did that, because YouTube can shut me down at a moment's notice, and then I can't talk to any of you guys. Some of you have come to my website. That's the ultimate, is to come to my website and sign up to do one of my quizzes, both so you can find out where you are on the hero's journey, but also so we can be in contact that transcends all of the, the YouTubes and the Facebooks and the Twitters and all that kind of thing. So yes, To Your Bare Feet by Juan Torres. I love you guys a lot. And I don't know exactly when I'm going to be coming on, but I am going to be doing a live specifically on my story, telling it in detail. I've been asked for this a few times because I just brush by it in interviews and all that kind of thing. It's also written in my book. So happy if you want to pick up a copy of my book, I'd be happy to send that to you. My Twitter is @BethMartins. You got it, Kelly Effie. I'm pretty much @Beth Martins on Instagram as well. You can come and check in with me if that's whatever your favorite social media is, then I'm probably there. I'm also on Float, but I haven't gone there in a long time, so I'm not sure what's happening. I forget about Float. But anyway, have a beautiful rest of your day. I love you. Thank you so much. Oh, Bitches Brew. Thank you for asking, Ginger. That is Sunday evening. And actually, I'm going to be hosting it on my channel. So it will be here, 7:15 p.m. Central Time is the next Bitches Brew. All right. On that note, I will just tell you one more time that I love you and thank you for coming. And hello, Lisa. You're listening from Colorado. That's excellent. So I hope you enjoyed the replay. This interview was very powerful. God bless to George, and God bless all of you as well.